when you have a big community of people that are sharing their voice and they're sharing their opinions and they are sharing all the details of an industry that is very complex but is also working a little bit under the carpet from a visibility perspective, is a perfect start to change.
Welcome to the Shipping Podcast, where I meet interesting maritime professionals sharing their passion for the shipping industry and their everyday job. I am your host. My name is Lena Gothberg. Hello, Shipping Podcast listeners, and welcome to the 139th episode of the Shipping Podcast. I hope you're well and that you're staying safe. As I mentioned in the last episode, I would open up to interviewing people who have given me feedback or written to me and asked to become a guest on the podcast. So here comes the first one. In mid-January 2020, I received an email from a young top manager who wrote to me that he wanted to give the perspective of a young manager in this space, since he is a part of a very small group of top managers in the maritime industry. That triggered me, of course, and that was probably his intention. So I started to look at my schedule to see when we could meet, as he lives in the Netherlands and I live in Sweden. I thought that maybe I could do a detour when I was traveling to Brussels for the European Shipping Week. But after having studied the program of that event and also taken into consideration that I was presenting at a panel, I decided to put that trip on hold and to do it later. My trip to Brussels was my latest flight, and that took place on February the 18th, before the pandemic. So I haven't had the time to meet with this young top manager since then. But now, when I have the possibility of using Zoom for my interviews, I decided to reach out to him again and ask if he was still interested. He was. So I think we had a really good conversation Tuesday this week, and I want you to listen to it. I'm happy to present to you Giovanni Colotto. He is the managing director of the Poli tankers in Holland. Please enjoy. Welcome to the Shipping Podcast. Could you please introduce yourself?
Hello to everyone. My name is Giovanni Colotto. I'm managing director of the Poli Ship Management. I'm an Italian naval architect. I was born in Genoa and raised in Genoa, where I also did all my studies in the city. Always connected to the ocean since I was a kid. Because of that, I decided to follow my passion also in my profession. And that is how basically I started shipping and ship management since the start. Today I live in the Netherlands. I have two beautiful daughters and I'm married. And yes, we run ships every day.
So what is your background?
I studied, as I told you, naval architecture and marine engineering. So I was very passionate about numbers and logics as in general. And then I decided, okay, let's put together the passion for the ocean and the sea with that natural inclination. And then I went through that university, that option, which is quite a good university in my city. So then it was like, a quite simple decision to make. So I would say that it was really fulfilling from a personal perspective. So there was a lot of passion into that, because at the end it's quite a tough journey for a student to become a marine engineer. So you need passion. That's for sure.
And what was your first job after that?
I decided to move into more like a personal journey. So I felt like shipping was very global, and to really leave it on your skin, the way was to go out of your comfort zone. So I moved to Singapore. I had the opportunity to move in Singapore immediately as a first job, where I spent 2 years there. And then I got really in love with Asia and with the different cultures that you have there, So I also had the chance then to go in Shanghai for other 2 years. Then in Middle East, in Dubai, in Sharjah, which is close to Dubai. And then we got married with my wife. We felt like Europe was again a good mix. And then we came back to the Netherlands. But I would say that what was really driving me at that time was more the feeling of doing a journey for yourself as a person, and then that the profession would have been just a normal or a natural follow-up of what you are growing as a person. So I was feeling like, okay, there are so many seafarers, so many different stakeholders in this industry. You really need to develop an emotional intelligence that understands all these different moving parts, and not just sit there and focus on the skills, or let's call them more hard skills. So that was basically the real driver of my past so far.
You wrote an email to me in mid-January asking to become a guest on the podcast. Why was that?
Because basically I'm really in love with podcasts in general. I think they are the new way of communicating. They are very inclusive, and they allow people also, not only super top manager of big corporates, but I would say like everybody to share their opinion. And I'm also a true believer that the new way of communicating is to create community around different spaces. And shipping is definitely a big space, actually. I mean, within shipping, we have many spaces, I would say. And then the first feeling I had was why there is not anything specifically for shipping, being such a big industry and so important, right? And then I was looking on my phone, and I went through your podcast. And I loved it simply. And then I started listening to a few interviews, and I said, this is exactly what I want to hear, what I want to listen. And then I felt, okay, because it's a community, and that is probably the vision and the mission of such a thing. I want to get in touch with them and see if I can be part of it, just to share my idea. Because you see, the beauty of shipping is that everybody has a very strong and interesting story to tell. And because I think that I'm a little bit different from the normal stereotype of a manager in shipping, because I'm very young. And what we can see today probably is that young people are more attracted by other industries. I felt it could be interesting to share my angle of what shipping is and what shipping will be, especially.
Can I just point out that I didn't pay you to say that you love the podcast?
No.
I am happy. I get a little bit embarrassed, but I also feel like invigorated by people saying that to me. So I'm happy that you wrote to me. You also mentioned that you wanted to give the perspective of a very young top manager. So what is your perspective on this industry then?
Let's talk about what is today as the present of the industry, and then the future, if that is fine with you. First of all, it's a very complete industry. And when I say complete, it means from a set of soft skills perspective and hard skills perspective. You have many stakeholders, you have many different type of leadership that you have to apply, and you have a lot of technical complexities that you have to learn. So, for example, when you just talk with just to give an example, in my ship management space, if you talk to the technical department, you basically understand that you will need an entire lifetime to really understand and master that part. If you go to a chartering department, you will have the same feeling, and so on and so on. So it's so broad and full of knowledge that really, to me, is exciting, especially if you are young, because you are really eager to learn, and you have this hunger of more. And then it's global. And I know that sounds like normal today, because actually many business became global, but not as shipping, I still believe. I mean, it's like in one single day, you can talk with a person from Asia, a person from US, a person from Scandinavia, a person from, I don't know, South Europe, Africa, whatsoever. I mean, it's unbelievable. And then there is a third part, which is very powerful. You get used to manage and to talk to virtual teams. And when I say virtual teams, means crew, seafarers, ships moving around the world. And that is a type of leadership that today is getting more and more important. I mean, this pandemic was a perfect example of what I'm saying now. And for us in shipping, this is just normal. It's our DNA, right? I mean, we manage difficult assets everywhere in the world. and we don't actually see them so often. So if we are lucky, we go on board a single ship maximum twice per year. And still we are able to run efficiently and I would say relatively safely because statistics are actually good in general from remote. So you see the disruption that pandemic had on many businesses, but I don't see that same disruption happening in shipping. And this because resilience is there, because remote communication was already there. Sure, disruption comes on a different angle maybe for shipping in such a pandemic case, but not the virtual part of it.
Can I be the devil's advocate here?
Yeah, sure.
I think it depends on which segment of the shipping industry that you're in. Because if you look at the people who are, passengers, cruise ships, I would say that is a different story. Then I would say maybe you are working in the tanker business, aren't you? Yeah. So that has also got another thing happening on the other side with the oil war going on. But I agree with you. But what is the difference then between being a young top manager and a little bit older top manager? Because all you said now, I think every person in charge that I have been speaking to would say the same. I love shipping because it's global. You get to see all the people. You build your relationships. But I think there will be some addition to what you need when you are a manager for the future.
The difference is that most of the managers you see are driven by experience. So, and this is quite a very strong cliche in our industry that managers are experience-based and not process or logic-based. So if you want to be a successful young manager, you really have to understand the process in itself and bring value not through the experience, saying, okay, I've seen this already 20 times and I'm quite convinced that this is how we should do again, which still is valuable. Don't get me wrong. It's very important to have experience in a team, but to integrate all the diversity and to bring a new value for the future, I think it's a plus to be young. And obviously, it's a plus when it comes to digitalization, when it comes to strong vision of change, when it comes to transformation of companies. I would say that young blood usually has a better energy and vision to do it in the long term. So if you are young and you know that you have to go through a 10 years transformation of a business, for you is not a problem, right? So, and I believe that today shipping needs this type of change. Actually, it's going through this change already. So that's happening. It's not an opinion.
I agree with you. I totally agree with you. But I am, as you see, a little bit older than you are.
Yeah.
I believe in change and I believe in digitalization. And I started this podcast because I want more people to understand what's happening. So I'm not sure it's about age. I think it's about mindset.
Yeah, well, true. Again, also here, what you said before, it depends a bit on the space of shipping where you are. So there are certain spaces that are more prone to innovation, regardless of the age. That is true, and more about the mindset, sure. Others that maybe they are suffering, or maybe because that is also something we have to say, right? The market in itself has been very soft in the last 10 years, and that's not helping. Because when you don't have capital and you don't have liquidity in the market, you cannot really invest in innovation as you would if you are strong from a financial perspective. That's something we have to say in favor of shipping, right? So, and that's probably extends to many sectors. Not all of them, true, but volatility is there. I mean, that's part of the game, right?
But I also think that ship owners, they love their ships. So they do innovate on the ships. I think shipping is cutting edge on several areas when it comes to technical developments on the ships. However, not as much. When I started the podcast 5 years ago, connectivity was much more expensive and not all the ships were connected. And every ship owner I asked at that time, they said, no, we're not going to be connected because we don't want the crew on Facebook, which is a little bit narrow-minded, I think. Now people are talking about machine-to-machine learning. They are talking about a lot of other stuff that can happen if you go down the digital road, which you have to do sooner or later. So I would say that technical developments in the industry, that is on the ships. But I don't think it has happened in other parts of the industry, like you say, for instance, on the HR side or on the insurance side or on the market side, or how we do the business, more or less. So that is probably where I see the biggest changes happening.
Yeah, it's the digital landscape is quite complex, right? So we should also put a framework there. I mean, to put like the correct part of the puzzle together. It can be for operational efficiency, it can be for asset management, it can be to connect stakeholders, and that's probably the part where I see more value to be untapped in the future. So connecting stakeholders and people that today are actually working a little bit in silos will be the big change. And I'm sure it will happen, because there is also this shift in the generation that is happening at the same time. And then young people like me will actually expect to work more through digital platform rather than talking, for example, right? It can be good and bad, right? I mean, it's always, as usual, there is a balance, but you see also brokers today are working a lot on WhatsApp or in general chatting and not talking on the phone anymore. I see it even, I have direct experience with senior brokers that are used to, or they're pushing the young people to call because they want to feel, the negotiation by voice, and young people that actually fix vessels only with chatting. That's a transition that I think is exciting in a way. And you see that the fundamentals are the same. So that the knowledge base kind of is the same, but the tools and the enablers are different. This is what I think is exciting.
Yeah. I noted that you said they are working a little bit in silos. I would say it's like a barricade of silos all over the place. But I mean, one of the things that I think should be the hardest to change is the elderly generation, which I call the handshake generation. You don't do business with people you haven't shaken their hands. But as you say, now technical innovation makes you do business over a mobile or whatever. But I think that the problem really is the trust, because the way forward is to share information with other stakeholders in a different way that you have until now. You're not supposed to share secrets or business secrets or things like that. But you need to trust each other to share things that will be mutually beneficial to you.
Yeah.
And that is, I think, where the problem is.
Yeah, I think if I can add on that, the point of trust or sharing, it's about having a safe, let's call it for a moment, like to be very ideal, right? So it's to have a safe environment where you can share. And when I say safe environment means, because shipping by nature is a midstream vector, right? So, and when you are in the midstream, of course, you are very tight because you are pushed from the right side and you're pushed from the left side. So to capture value and to access to the right value for your service is becoming more and more difficult, right? Because you have pressure from charterers, you have pressure from international requirements, you have pressure from bunker prices, and so on and so on. But actually the value of your service, so the freight rates, are usually not really reflecting all this pressure. So you have to imagine, and then if you put yourself in the shoulder of a ship owner or a ship operator, it's normal that they feel like, yeah, I have to share and I have to be transparent, but what is the real payback of this for me to share, right? Because the more I share, the more I will be asked for. This is the mentality that many owners and operators have, I think. And this is the real big challenge to change. Because if you think about it, transportation today in general is cheap. If I order on Amazon anything, the transportation part of it will be just a small amount, right? So it means that there is no real value in it. Now I'm talking about stuff like, B2C type of stuff. So the things that we really buy and we get from maybe a container ship, and not really the oil or the chemicals where I am. But the concept at the base of it is the same. So either we give more value to the transportation, and then probably we will reduce a bit volume, but we will also have better paying freights. And this will be like as a domino effect, innovation will come, more transparency will come, because then you can really afford it. And then you want to see it because the customer of your customer will see the value and will actually be happy to pay a bit more or a premium on your service because he can see the difference. And today, this is not really happening because, as you said, there is no transparency, but there is also not willingness to pay a premium for a better service yet.
No, I think maybe in the cruise industry there was, because that is closer to the consumer.
Yeah.
And also on the container freight. I mean, we have seen projects between, like IKEA and Maersk, I think. They are trying out biodiesel, and IKEA is willing to maybe pay a bit for that. We will see what happens, because at the end of the day, it's you and me as consumers that has the possibility to change things. But in order to do that, then we need to stand up and be visible to the general public. And that is why I'm always asking all my guests, how do we become more visible to the general public? What do you think?
Yeah, that is a good point. And that is the reason why I actually got in touch with you in the first place, because this type of initiative are very powerful to me. When you have a big community of people that are sharing their voice and they're sharing their opinions and they are sharing all the details of an industry that is very complex, but is also working a little bit under the carpet from a visibility perspective, is a perfect start to change. Or more than to change, to raise awareness of consumers. Because what you see, and all of us will probably have experienced this, when you talk to friends, relatives, or whatsoever, they really know little about shipping and the complexity of it. It's like everybody of us probably heard in the past, you move from A to B stuff. Well, yeah, that is correct, but it's not exactly like that. I mean, it's like you go in an hotel and you see everything is clean, but you don't know what is on the back of it, right? So how much work, organization, and regulations and politics there are behind it. So this is a bit the point, community and awareness is very important. And the more people knows, the more people will give value, because you cannot give value to something that you actually don't know. This is the very, very real point. Another example, a little bit on a different dimension, but I think it gives the flavor of what we are saying here. During the pandemic, we have tons of seafarers, a lot of people, thousands of them, they could not join back their home. There was no way. And our community that is huge, because it is huge, he was not actually able to coordinate one single voice at the political level. It came at the very last part, a little bit with IMO, with local authorities and whatever, but it came with a lag of 2-3 months. I find it very difficult. And I know, because I spoke also with other CEOs, even of definitely bigger companies, than with a footprint that is bigger than mine. But and it's difficult. There was, because if you have to coordinate and to put together a voice when the pandemic already took place, it's too late, because you will not have the speed to act. And that is a good example, I think.
Yeah, and I also think that if they realize that during the pandemic that there is no common voice to influence people who take decisions on our behalf, then they should do something about that also when we go back to the new reality, which we are going to face sooner or later here. I mean, because there's so many things we need for people to understand when they are deciding things. I mean, we've got all the discussions about the green industry, becoming green. If they don't understand what we do, how can they support us with the right decisions? And I'm not only talking about IMO, but I have realized, I mean, I was in my little part of the world for a long time, but I have realized that at IMO, it's the nations that are part of IMO that are sending their representatives to the IMO. And they are in the General Assembly taking decisions on our part. But how much do they know? How much do they know about the maritime industry itself? I should not complain, because I think the Swedish delegation is really good. I admire them, and I would want to have them on my podcast, but not all of them are as good as we would want them to be. And then next step on top of that is IMO is not, it's the International Chamber of Shipping that is gathering all the ship owners in the world. And then you have International Trade Association. I mean, they have to find out a way of being a megaphone or whatever to the rest of the world.
Yeah.
I was also upset. I'm still upset that they haven't sorted that out until now. But I'm happy that they have now realized that there is something to be done to that.
Yeah, no, that is true. On the positive side, though, you see that when they decide, or we as a community and as a space, we decide to move, we are really effective. I mean, in January 2020, we switched and we made a huge management of change. And at the end of the day, if you look backward, it was done in a very smooth and clean way. Clean in the sense of execution. I mean, for all the owners, I think that the level of compliance was very high. And
you are referring to the new...
To the sulfur cap and the 0.5 limit and preparation. And I mean, if you think about how many shipping companies are out there and the level of compliancy and it's impressive.
Yes.
And in a positive way, though. So many times you see shipping as like, yeah, we are bad guys. That's where pollution is coming from and whatsoever. That, okay, maybe it's true in part, but the reaction is impressive, and I think it's also exciting for young people like me to see. Yeah, the first step that we did was, so for me, like, I see this as in the beginning of my career in a way, right? So I see this big change as in the first 10 years, let's say. So the way I will be posed in the next big change will be positive because I have seen it already and I've seen it in a positive way. So actually the impact on the asset, it was very small. The impact on the business was actually very small, but the impact on the environment is big. So you will be immediately with your mind, like on the back of your head, you will like, okay, so the next one will be the same. Actually, I can do even better, right? So you immediately are like, posed to the problem in a positive way, and that is very constructive, I guess. So that is, I think this is a very good example to showcase for the future of change, for the future of shipping.
Yeah, but also to go back to the visibility question.
Yeah.
I mean, if we don't show the young talents that we are there, we are an option. We are a really exciting option for them to enter into a very exciting career. How will they know if we don't tell them?
Yeah, no, you basically anticipated a bit what I was about to articulate, because I told you this is the present, and then we have to look at the future, and the future has basically, to me, three pillars. One is, as you said, indeed, talent attraction and acquisition, decarbonization and digitalization. But if you think about them in this specific rank, talent acquisition can be very easy if you show the challenge of decarbonizing and digitalizing an industry, because then people will be excited about it, because there is a notion of opportunities. I mean, and I'm not talking about shipping people only, because what will happen is that in the future you will need new knowledge, a new type of people in the sector, like a computer science expert, a software engineer, a chief listening officer, people that are completely out of this sector today, or a customer success manager. These are all roles that are well existing in other industries, especially probably the software and the tech industries, definitely, because they are more innovative by nature. But imagine, for example, to have like a chief listening officer in any shipping companies. It would be killed of job. There is so much work to do, so much to listen, so much to integrate.
Explain to the people who are listening, what is a listening officer?
Well, a listening officer is someone that actively integrate, involve, and include people. And when I say this, is what we are trying to do is we are breaking silos here. So different departments, different functions, people on board. And when I say people on board, it's not only masters, chief engineers, and top officers. I'm talking about all the full chain of people working on board. I mean, at the end of the day still, and I think this is quite common for many shipping companies, I cannot say for all, of course, but many for sure, they are not able to anchor the voice and the opinion of all their people. I mean, if you are a small owner of, I don't know, let's say 10 ships, yeah, you have minimum 200, 250 people on board on contract, and other 200, 250 waiting to join. I mean, it's a workforce of 500 people.
And that is the average ship owner. They have 10 ships.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I pulled out that number. But I mean, and 500 people, if you compare it with any other industry, is a big, big company. So how do you make sure that you get value from all these 500 people? Because if they could add one single positive feedback per year, I mean, the value creation would be really huge. But to do so, you have to create a framework and put people in the position to actually add value. So this is why and then I connect this to what I was saying before. This is where I think also young managers or a more innovative mindset can create this framework that facilitate this. Because we grew up in a way that we need this. We want this. We want a community. We want feedbacks. We want a flat organization, right? And I think it's coming really for us is DNA. For millennials and the generation to come, it's what they want, right? So this is, I think, the trick to attract talents. This is really where we have to work, you know.
When I started this podcast 5 years ago, my ambition was to reach to the people outside the industry because I wanted them to become interested. This is such an interesting and exciting industry that you can enter. But after a while, when I started to look at the statistics, where was my podcast downloaded? It's in the maritime hubs. So apparently, people are listening to each other in a way. And that is also fascinating, I think. In a way, it's good that I have an outlet where people can listen and find innovative ideas and so on, because I'm a nerd on innovations. I think that is so interesting. And I do a lot of things in other industries that I think, wow, this should be in the maritime industry. But yeah, who am I to explain that to the top management? I'm a little bit too much for them to handle, I think. No, but I think it's... Why do we have such a difficulty reaching out to people in other industries or young people where they are in school and so on? There must be a tap there that we have missed.
I think the problem is the competition that we have. When you have to compare yourself with big tech giants, which are definitely the strongest and probably the best benchmark you can have for talent attraction and talent acquisition, you really have to raise your bar, because if you compare any shipping company with, I don't know, Google, Amazon, Uber, whatever, first of all, they are touching the customer. So the B2C businesses they have a sort of facilitation by business model. And then you can see them and you can immediately understand what they are doing. And second, the power of the brands, because the brand identity that they have is super powerful. And then people want to work there. And let's be honest, when you go in such a big company, it's not sure that you will be happy or that you will feel yourself really engaged or really making an impact, because that's a word that usually millennials and people, young guys are looking for. I'm not sure you do it at the end of the day. Maybe few are doing it because they are growing in the company and they are very talented, but I would say majority doesn't. So after a few years, you end up with, a big name in the CV, and then you will go somewhere else. And this is not value creation at the end of the day, or at least it's not satisfaction, right? So the point is the brand identity. In shipping, we are not really focusing on marketing and brand identity as yet. So the young people will look for jobs in LinkedIn, will look for job in GitHubs, they look for jobs on the internet. And the first thing they will do, they immediately look up the website of the company. And if the website is not fancy and is not attracting, they will immediately believe that the company is not good enough and maybe it's a cash machine, and you don't know that. Because when you are young, you don't see this part. I mean, this is very important to understand the logics of young talents.
You make me so happy when you say that, because that is exactly what I have seen through. And yesterday I saw an article on LinkedIn from Jonathan Bishman, who is the marketing guru who used to work for Maersk in the old times, where he said not a lot of the top managers are on Twitter or other social media where they are reachable. Yeah. So they have to start there. You have to show who you are. You have to show that you are someone that people want to work with. Yeah. But you can talk about that. That's better that you talk about that than me.
Yeah, it's starting. What I can see is that it's starting, and it's starting on two levels. The first one is innovation, and the second one is brand identity. Innovation, you can see it because there are many accelerators and thousands of startups coming up, and this is good. I mean, for me, it's super good. I have been talking with few startups lately. We have some collaboration with others. We are trying to launch some pilots or proof of concept with ideas that we believe are powerful. So that is something I strongly support. And the second one is brand identity, which you were saying before. I see more leaders coming out, at least on LinkedIn, with posts that are engaging, that are good. Then what we have to see or to measure in the future, like in the next years, if they walk the talk, right? So if really is just sort of advertisement or self-advertisement, or if it's actually delivering some real follow-up on talents. That's something I still cannot say, but in general, I see a positive trend. I see it from the big companies. What is still missing is the small companies. And what you said, I mean, it's the average and the majority of ship owners are 10 ships or even lower. No, I mean, okay, but anyway, there are many, it's a very scattered industry, right? So you see at least half of ship owners are small in a way, right? So how do they do brand identity? Because there is a lot of space for talents there also. And probably it could be that many people will feel more a sort of connection between their values and the value of a family company when they go in a smaller owner. It depends. I mean, depends on people, depends on many factors, but it could very well be. So,
but when will they have the time? I mean, 10 ships, and it's usually a small company, and yeah, there are so many things to do.
Yeah, true, but well, I can tell you what we do as an example. I think that's interesting because, of course, that started not only from me but from the owner herself. We do it as for fun. We do it for fun. So when you do it for fun, you think about the post or you think about the message that you want to send out of the office hours, actually. So maybe you are driving and you say, "Hey, today this happened. Why we don't share it on LinkedIn?" Right? And then the day afterwards, we come back, and in this specific case, I gave this job to one of our crewing officers, and she's super excited. I said, I mean, follow also the marketing side of it. Why not? It's just 1 or 2 posts per week. What it can take you? 30 minutes, 40 minutes per week. But it brings motivation, it brings diversification, it brings brand identity, and it brings also a different picture of our industry. So when you say there is no time, I always don't believe this. I mean, there is always time to do stuff that is important. I mean, the 20-80 rule for me is like the golden rule. I mean, and in this case, this is important. This is important.
So if people want to have a look, what is the name of your account on LinkedIn that they want to follow?
The Poli Tankers BV. So the name of the company, yes. So you just enter it. There is a LinkedIn page, and then we post there. I mean, again, it's a young initiative, so we just have a few posts. But what we have seen so far is that it's working well. That we like it. Yeah, we just like it.
You need to start working now, because now you will get a lot of followers.
I hope so. That's fine. But anyway. We are not selling stuff to consumers, right? So that's no, but jokes apart, I think it's even small steps, baby steps can make a big impact at the beginning. Then surely, if you want to grow and you want to have a marketing platform that is strong, for sure you have also to invest money. But you don't have to start from there, right? You have to start from the small stuff. And that gives immediately a payback, immediately.
You need to have a strategy. That's the most important thing. What you want to achieve, and then just start doing it. So one more thing that is very close to my heart is diversity. What is your view on that?
Is key for the future of this industry, because we have so many bias and we have so many people coming from a very similar background that there is no way that a big change of transformation will happen if you don't have a D&I policy in place. And when I say D&I policy, the diversity and inclusion policy means really to believe in it. And I'm not talking about only gender or that type of equality. Don't get me wrong. I mean, this is important and this has to happen, but I see it also happening. And at least in the office side of shipping companies, I think we are quite well placed in general, because you see, I would say, good equality in terms of cultures and nationalities also. We are quite diverse, and that is part of the nature of our business. What I say with inclusion for me is to give voice to everybody. So the challenge that shipping companies have is how to make a company that is flat and at the same time is efficient. Because my personal management feeling today is everybody is advertising a flat organization as being more efficient. This is true up to a certain level. This is true because, you facilitate feedbacks from everybody, but then to converge all these feedbacks into something that is an actionable plan is very difficult. And then what happens in the medium term, if you just receive feedbacks but you don't do anything, then you will lose the inclusion because people will lose the motivation to give feedbacks and they will not feel like heard. So there is always a balance in the management side of it, which honestly I still don't have a real reply on that. It's something that probably I will have to try and learn, but it is a key. It is a key. You cannot have only people that sailed, that came into office, that made their career in the office, and that they became CEO. This is important. There can be people like that. But if you want to add value or to see things in a new way, you need more diversity. You need more people coming from different industries, right? Here we are at the point where if you receive a CV, and for me, as you said, I'm working in the tanker business, and this person does not have experience in tankers, people start saying, maybe he has a good profile, but he's not a tanker guy. Yeah, so what? Better. It depends. It depends on the team, how is the composition of it. So there is still a lot of work.
How many people do you have in your team?
Ship management side, we are 20 because we do the full ship management. So technical, QHSE, crewing, HR and purchasing, and IT, of course. And then in chartering and operations, we have other 5 people.
So how many are women?
In my team, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 in my team. 2 purchasers, 1 crewing officer, and 1 in QHSE.
I also think that the young generation, for them, diversity is nothing new. It's like, so that is probably a reason why you haven't thought about it in that way before. I don't know. I'm putting words in your mouth now, but I can see.
No, but some of the best manager I had, if I can, because today what is very important, especially with artificial intelligence, machine learning, all this digitalization, emotional intelligence is gaining importance, right? More and more. I'm not saying that before it was not existing. That is important, all the time. But what I found in my direct experience, this is not a rule, I'm just saying what I felt, that my female managers were always better in emotional intelligence, were always one step ahead of me even, saying, you are going in this direction. I think you should do this. I think you should stay, and they were right. So they were able to understand or to feel soft skills problem before me, which I see more in female managers than in male. That doesn't mean is a rule, but I'm just saying I'm quite a strong believer that female managers are really important, are actually a good thing for business.
I didn't pay you to say that either.
No. I believe it. I mean, I have 2 daughters, you see, I have to advertise them,
Did you ever have a role model growing up?
Yeah, I did, of course. Actually, that was my father, but he's a surgeon, so he's a doctor, so completely different world, comes from a completely different space. But more for, as I told you, for the soft skills part. I think that made the person that I am today to feel or to see a different angle, because again, empathy and emotional intelligence for doctors, and especially surgeons, is quite a leading skill that you have. And that probably gives you a different angle. So even if you work in an industry like shipping, and you grew up side by side with a doctor that is teaching you about people, about how they feel, about different perspective, you learn automatically, or you learn by nature to really put yourself in the shoes or in the perspective of someone else. I think that was the best role model I had. If now looking backward, that was a big value. Yes.
Who do you think I should interview the next? Who would you want to listen to?
Another young voice, actually. I would like to see, it can also not be a CEO or a manager. Who cares? I mean, the role is important, but here is I would be very happy to hear someone close to my age and see if their feelings are similar to mine, and see if their opinion of the future is similar, or what drove him to this industry. That could be that we find I have completely different perspective. Who knows?
No, I think your perspective is refreshing.
Okay, thanks.
Finally, I've found someone to speak to about what I think, what my view is of the world, even though you're at the beginning of your career and maybe I'm a little bit sort of at the end in a way. But I think these things are so important that we discuss them. We need to talk about talent and digitalization and all of what we have been talking about. So I'm happy that you wrote that email to me. Yeah. And I might come back and ask you for further views later on. You never know.
Yeah, that would be nice, as usual. Contributing is good, I think.
Thank you, Giovanni. Thank you for taking the time and having the patience with me when everything went wrong today.
Thanks. It's a pleasure to share and to be part of it. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you, Giovanni. Thank you for sharing your views with me and the audience. I appreciate that you have reached the same conclusions as I have on many of the drivers for change. I will put a link in the show notes to the LinkedIn page that you're referring to in the interview, and I will keep an eye on you moving forward. I will be back with more interviews like this. For me, they are like a blind date. I have no idea who will turn up on my Zoom, except what we have exchanged via email before. So if you want to try your luck and have a conversation with me that could be broadcasted on what needs to be changed to develop the maritime industry, or if you have any views on the future maritime industry, drop me a line at hello@shippingpodcast.com and I will consider your name. Until the next time, from me to you, over and out. Thank you for listening to the Shipping Podcast. Don't forget to tell everyone that you meet that there is a shipping podcast available and that they should download it and listen to the maritime professionals who are sharing their passion for the shipping industry.